my mom's dad, my grandpa, is blind. And, you know, he has been ever since my mom was a little girl, so he didn't work. And my mom's mom, my grandma, brought home 1 check a week to support the family. So my mom's been poor all her life. But even though she was poor, she was never jealous of her best friend Sandra, whose mom worked at Sears and bought her all these little matchy-matchy outfits she had to wear. Now, my mama and Sandra were best friends in the 6th grade. They did everything together. And their favorite thing to do was always to go down to the mall, like any other teenager, but this was the old mall on Highway 70. Well, they were there on a Friday night. You know, they didn't buy anything. They just kind of window shopped. And when they were done, they walked across the street to Sky City, which was like the Walmart back then. And right outside Sky City, there was this picture booth. And see, this was before cell phones and before cameras were on every single device that you owned. So my mama and Sandra just loved to get their pictures taken. They would roll their eyes up and look up at the camera through their lashes because someone told them that was sexy. Now, when they had had their fun and were ready to be picked up, they walked to the nearest payphone. Back then, there was one on every corner. And without putting her money in, my mom dialed her dad. And see, the way a payphone works, for you guys back there, you little young kids, you can call someone and they can hear you just fine. No, you can hear them just fine. But they can't hear you unless you put your money in or they call the phone. So see, my mom, you know, instead of spending her money on a phone call, she would spend her money on the photo booth. And so she would call up her dad, and when he would answer, she would start clicking the little receiver. And he would say, "Is this Kim?" And she would click once for yes. And he would say, "You want me to guess the number?" And she would click once for yes again. And my grandpa would go up number by number, 1, 2, 3, until my mom clicked the receiver to let him know that was it. And he guessed all 7 digits of the payphone's telephone number this way. And ever since my mom figured out that little trick, she hasn't spent a dime on a payphone yet.
Well, everyone knew how adults used to be when they were teenagers and how they just loved to party around. See, there was this one time when my dad and a couple of buddies decided they would grab some beers and have a party at this old and abandoned house. See, when they got there, they decided it would be fun to throw the beer bottles at the glass windows. My dad, of course, went along with them and decided to punch the glass window with his fist. Blood dripping everywhere. He asked for help, but no one would even bother to help him. So he had this truck. It was stick drive. He had no other choice but to drive it with his left hand on the stick and his left knee on the wheel. When he got to the hospital, he passed out right in front of the nurse. He then woke up, and the nurse told him, "Luckily you got here on time, because if it wasn't for the grace of God, you would have never made it through."
My dad was born in Colorado, and so my family, well, we just traveled back there to visit some of their family. And so every year, we go back to Colorado, and 1 year before I was born, my parents and my sister went to Colorado like they always do, but they decided, you know, hey, let's go skiing. Now, everybody in my family was a good skier, except my mom. See, now, she wasn't an awful skier. She just had one flaw. She could go straight just fine. She could turn to the right, but she couldn't turn to the left. And now that was a problem when the trails went left because she would go straight and run off the trail. And when that would happen, she would go into this big snowdrift, which is basically just a big pit of snow that's off the trail. And so my dad would have to, you know, go in there, pick her up, put her back on the trail, get her skis, help her back on this, you know, and it was just awful. And so they were constantly doing this, and my mom, knowing that my sister was a much better skier at 10 years old, told her, you know, stay in my eyesight, okay? Don't go around the corner where we can't see you. And my sister was awful at following rules, and this was no exception. My mom fell one too many times, and my sister was gone. Jessica! Jessica! With no response, these worst possible case scenarios on how my sister died started popping into my mother's head. Oh my God, what if she was eaten by a polar bear? What if she skied off a ledge? My dad, he was a little more, you know, calm and collected. basically just calmed her down and said, let's go back to the ski resort and I bet you will find her there. So they get back down to the ski resort and they're asking people around, hey, have you seen a little girl? Just a little girl, yay high, blonde hair. But nobody knows a thing. So they find this chairlift worker, you know, because he's a worker there, you think he's got to know something. And so they ask him, hey, my daughter is gone and she's about yay high, blonde hair, but he does not give a crap about what my parents are saying. It is going in one ear and out the other, because finally, he radios in a sarcastic tone saying, oh yeah, we got a breaker 6912, girl lost, blonde hair, yay high. Yeah, if you see her, yeah, bring her back. Yeah, bring her back to the parents. Okay, yeah, do that, okay. And during this conversation, just a random stranger was listening and heard about how she was describing Jessica, and he interrupted saying, are you talking about Jessica? And my parents' eyes lit up, because if he knows who she is, he's got to know where she is. And so he tells my parents, you know, my sister Jessica is at the first aid tent. And when my parents heard that, their hearts sunk. Because first aid tent, I mean, you know, you gotta guess what happened there. And so when they got there, turns out my sister was perfectly fine. What happened was, she had skied down forgetting what my mother had told her, told somebody, hey, my parents are lost. And they told her, go to the first aid tent and we'll find your parents. And so while she was in the first aid tent, she had made friends with everybody. She knew how Bill broke his arm, how Lucy broke her leg, how everybody did whatever they did and who they were. And my parents were just so happy to see her. They couldn't even punish her. Well, take that back. Until the next day when they went whitewater rafting, but that's a different story.
One thing that has faded from our generation is spankings. When my dad was a kid, if you did anything wrong, the first thing you got was a spanking. No questions asked. Well, you see, my grandmother had these diet drinks. They were called Seagos, and they were off limits to all the kids, and they all knew that. One day, my Uncle Evan decided that he would have the privilege of drinking one. So he waited until no one was around, walked into the kitchen, opened the refrigerator, and grabbed a Seago and ran to his room to drink it. Now, a couple of hours passed, and my grandmother came home from work, and she was just really tired and wanted something to drink. So she goes into the kitchen and opens the refrigerator and looks around a little bit, and she notices something's gone. So she calls all the kids into the room, and she looks at them and says, I want to know who took my Seago. And they all just kind of, I don't know. So she said, well, I have a better idea. So she goes back into the kitchen and grabs 4 Seagos. She hands each of them a Seago and says, well, let's see who can pop the top of them. So they all looked at each other, I can do that. My Aunt Karen, psh, my Uncle Rodney, psh, and my dad, psh, and of course my Uncle Evan could. Psh. So my grandmother looks at them and says, well, since none of you are confessing, but all of you can pop the top off the drinks, you're all getting a spanking. Well, my Uncle Evan never really confessed to his crime until many years later. But when he did, my grandmother looked at him with one of her sassy grins and said, I knew it was you the whole time. I just wanted you kids to know that you couldn't pull a fast one on Mom.
My aunt liked to do things that my Nana did not approve of. One night she was out with her boyfriend who was 18 at the time and she was 16. Now, of course, for a first date, he takes her to a liquor store. Where else? He buys her this new drink called Tango, a mixture of Tang and vodka. Nervous as this was her first time drinking, she takes the glasses and just downs them one by one until soon the whole entire bottle is gone. Drunk out of her mind, her boyfriend decides it's time to take her over to her friend Carol's house where she was going to stay the night. She was so drunk she just walked straight up the stairs into her room and flopped down on her bed. Then got up and started knocking things over, spinning around, falling down, and giggling like crazy. Now, Carol, trying to calm her down for about 15 minutes or so, got a phone call. It was from my Nana. She picks it up, and there's my Nana on the other end. Hi, this is Amy's mom. Is Amy there? I need to speak with her. Now, Carol, freaking out, of course, because, her friend's drunk, just kind of answers with a quick, "Oh, she's in the shower right now, but I'll have her call you back when she gets out. Okay, bye." Now, nervous as she was, she settled down and calmed Amy down once again as she got back up and did whatever she was doing. Finally, she got Amy to lay down on the bed when suddenly there was a knock on the door. Carol walked downstairs, just calm, thinking everything was fine, and opens it to reveal my Nana standing right there. My Nana took one look at Carol and knew that something was wrong. My Nana was so determined to find out what was so wrong, she just walked straight inside, straight up the stairs, and busted Carol's door open, revealing my aunt drunk. My aunt took one look at my Nana and busted into tears, pleading, "Mom, please don't hit me. I'm sorry, Mom, please. I'm so sorry. I'll never do it again." Now, of course, my Nana just kept her calm, said, "Listen, get your shoes, get in the car, and we'll deal with this tomorrow." After what felt like 15 minutes of pleading, my aunt finally got her shoes and got in the car and sat down. Minutes later, my Nana sat down, took a deep breath in, turned around, and started beating my aunt. She was hitting her all kinds of ways and would not stop. My aunt just sat in the back seat pleading, "Mom, sorry, I'm so sorry. Please stop hitting me, Mom, this hurts, please." But my Nana just kept on going, hitting her all kinds of ways. Eventually, things blew over, and the only thing that my aunt got out of this was a major hangover, and the ability of going out with her boyfriend was taken away.
My Uncle Dave has always been the kind of person to pull pranks and play practical jokes because it was his way of fun. I don't know why, but my mom always fell for his pranks. She even told me about a couple of times that he'd act like he accidentally stabbed himself and used props like ketchup to make it seem real. Well, when my uncle was about 12, his father got him a motorcycle, and the only rule his parents had for this motorcycle was that he had to ride it with a parent. My Nana was dead serious about it. My grandfather, I don't know. We'll see what happens. So one day they were out riding all day, and my grandfather had to go to the convenience store. So he said, "All right, son, I gotta go to the convenience store, and you're gonna have to stop riding." My uncle did not want to stop riding. He was like, "I'm a pro at this. Come on, you can let me ride along. I can do this. I can do this." "All right, son, you can ride along, but just don't tell your mom, and I'll be back in 15 minutes. Now, if my Nana knew about this, she would not approve. Anyways, so he sees my grandfather leave, and he gets on his bike and says, "I'm going to go up near the school." Gets on, and takes off kind of fast. Well, on his little joyride, he hits a sand patch, and he loses all control. And as he's trying to gain control, he's like straddled over the bike, and he's like pulling on the throttle, which is not the smartest thing to do. He's headed straight for a brick wall. So he hits the brick wall, and my mom freaks out, and she runs all the way home. Mama, Dave wrecked his bike up near the school, and I don't know what to do. He's bleeding everywhere. He got you again, didn't he? I am so tired of these pranks he's pulling. I don't believe you. No, I'm serious, Mom, please. You have to listen to me. He's, oh my God, Mom, please, come on. Cooking dinner on the stove, get my shoes on. All right, I'm gonna follow you. So she walks all the way to the site of his accident until she gets close enough to see the most horrifying thing she thought she could ever witness in her life. Her son laying on the ground covered in debris, and a brick wall broken through, down, and all over the place. By this point, the ambulance had been called because my Nana was so slow to get there. But after my Uncle Dave was all full and rested, and he had 2 broken arms, he had to be bathed for like 2 months. Anyways, but after he was all full and rested, he realized something. I might have learned a lesson. Don't cry wolf when there is no wolf, because when there is a wolf, Mama ain't gonna believe you.